Welcome back.
To the Tiny Bookcase. I'm Ben.
And I am Nico. What you're about to hear is an interview.
A damn good one too. Prepare to learn.
If you enjoy hearing this guest talk, be sure to check out last week's episode where you can hear their story.
Ours too, if you're so inclined.
So, without further ado,
on with the show. But it's time to ask you some questions, Stu.
Uh-oh.
Hope you're ready.
I'm never ready, but I will do my best.
Well, I'm keen to hear the answers. I'm going to open us, if I may, Nico.
Go on.
Nice. Stu, what's the first book you remember reading?
Oh, holy hell. You know, I mean, I know I read books. I will say the first comic book I remember reading, because comic books are obviously very big in my life. It was Detective Comics number 602.
That's very specific.
If you ever get a chance to Google it, look that cover up. It is a glorious cover. Like, there's no way 8-year-old me didn't see that cover and be like, fuck yeah, I want to read comic books. There's a giant 4-armed monster holding Batman about to cut him with an axe. That's awesome.
I mean, it does sound good.
I'm quickly Googling it because I need to see it before this conversation continues.
Oh, it's
great.
Oh,
damn, that's great.
I know, that's such a great cover. I was 8 years old. I think it came out in like July 1989. And yeah, that's the first comic book I remember, the first of thousands upon thousands of comic books thereafter. And I definitely have remembered that.
I like the fashion icon status of using skulls as a belt of your toga. That's the of your loincloth, sorry.
I've got to say, Batman's pose is
Jesus-y?
No, I was going to say vaguely pornographic.
Oh, right, yeah. There's some shading around the crotch that is certainly questionable, I'll give you that.
It's a spread.
It's
a powerful spread.
And you might even say a spread eagle.
Spread bat.
Spread bat, as it were.
Oh, there I was, spread batted.
That's what Nico's been having on toast.
I'm not that close to Ozzy. Crikey. You've already established I'm a beetle. What? Can you give us even the smallest breakdown on what happens in that issue? Because
the odd thing is it's part 2 of a 3-part series, and all these years later, I have never gone back and read part 1. But it's the big demon. I forget what he's even called. Like, he only ever appears in this story. He comes to Gotham. He's axing the hell out of everything. And he kicks Batman's ass because he's way over Batman's pay grade. And Batman runs off and gets Etrigan the demon to come help him. And then I had the 3rd issue, so that would have been the 2nd comic I ever bought, number 603, where Batman and Etrigan team up and defeat that demon somehow. I forget how, but it ends with, after they kill the demon thing, Etrigan is going to kill Batman, but Batman somehow makes him laugh, and so he's like, hey, I like you. I'll leave you alone.
Amazing. I mean, you can definitely see why it would start a lifelong love affair with comic books, because that is just wacky, but also...
Yeah, it's not what you think about when you think Batman. You think Batman stopping, like, the Joker or other low-rent guys with guns or anything, not fighting a big 6-armed monster with a battle axe.
I don't know how
vibes, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry. I was about to go somewhere similar with it. Like, I don't know how strong the appeal of low-level guys with guns are to children, even if they've got clown makeup on. Whereas a giant guy with lots of arms and an axe is fairly undeniable to a 7 or 8-year-old boy, I would have thought.
Yeah, that's striking as hell.
Yeah. For sure. And then I think, were you going a similar route there with 2000 AD? Like, there's an element of pulp, isn't there, to 2000?
Yeah, that, like, slightly campy, but in a way that makes it super cool. Like the big dumb motorbikes screaming through the mega city. Like, this is really silly, and the robot butlers, and like, this is definitely stupid, but it's also the coolest thing in the entire world. And I wouldn't change it at all. And it probably hasn't aged very well, but I still love it.
See, I think that's the thing about camp. I think camp if camp is done well to begin with, I don't think it can age poorly. It's like Batman 66. You watch that now. It was campy to begin with. Now it's even campier, and it's just so much better for it.
I will not disagree with that.
That Cesar Romero didn't shave his mustache for that role
He did not. He just painted it.
It's just the best thing of like insider showbiz information I've definitely got in my head. Because it's ridiculous.
The other insider information I've heard about that show, Adam West and Frank Gorshin, who played the Riddler on that show, used to go to orgies and would not break character. In the orgy, they would be Batman and the Riddler.
Batman and the Diddler. That's the.
Oh man. I think you just ruined a few people listening's childhood, but that's okay.
Oh no!
That's my favorite thing to do, so don't worry about it.
Right, we've got to move on. We have to, for legal reasons. Stu, what is your secret talent that few people know about?
I don't know if it's a talent. It's more of something that I don't do. I can't get hiccups. I've never had hiccups in my life. Like I will get a hiccup, and I tried explaining this to my wife and she didn't understand it. I said, I will get one hiccup and I make myself shiver and then I don't get any more. And that's just it. Like when people just have hiccups, it's like telling a fish that your leg hurts. Like I just don't understand. Just stop having the hiccup. Just stop it.
Okay, so you sort of shiver like a duck getting water off its back. And
yes, that's what it is. And that's her other thing. She was like, well, how do you make yourself shiver? I was like, I don't know, the way I make myself not hiccup. I just kind of make myself do it. I shiver right down my spine and that's it. I have one hiccup and I'm out.
Can you only shiver when you've had a hiccup? Can you only force yourself to shiver when you've had one hiccup? Or can you do that at will?
I can do it at will. I just did it. Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, there we go. So that's what we've discovered two.
I can make myself shiver, and I don't get hiccups somewhat because of that.
At some point, you are going to screw up a C-list superhero villain.
Oh, you and Calendar Man are going to go at it super hard.
Any follow-up questions on that one, Nico?
I mean, I don't think so. Does it constitute a hiccup, or there must be another term for it if there's just the one?
If it's just I guess it's a hiccup instead of the hiccups.
A hiccup is you just have a hiccup, don't you?
I don't think I like it.
Apparently, you just have
I
one.
don't agree with this.
Nico wants a better name for it.
Oh.
We'll call them Neekups, just for you. When you have one, it's a Neekup.
Gear. It's a pre-shiver glottal stop.
Oh, how did you make it sound like you were the Riddler at an orgy when you said that? Right, this one's going to blow it wide open, I feel like. And it's, what's your favourite story? And obviously this can be from anything.
What's my favorite story? Crap.
Story.
That is... I'm trying not to go back to the comic book well, which I already did, but I mean, like, comic books have always been so big to me. They're what I've read my entire life. In high school, I had stopped reading comic books. I hit that age that everybody seems to hit where I was 15 or so, and I was just like, no, I'm too old and cool for this. And then I remember being 18, 19, 20 and being in a Walden Books. And I saw the collected trade of Kingdom Come by Mark Waid and Alex Ross. And I remember that had just started being published when I stopped reading, and I had heard things about it. So I picked it up at Walden Books and I looked through it. And a couple times in my life, I've had the moment where I've read something and it has completely changed what comic books can be for me. And that was one of those times where I was just like, oh, this is different. and then I read it, and it was great. And then I just started reading all the comic books again and never stopped. Also, I feel like I should be more pretentious and say graphic novels, but I never grew into that, so I will just call them comic books. And if I feel like being self-deprecating, funny books.
Funny books. I like that. So just so people know that are listening, so your podcast SWO that you host and run and everything. So this is a primarily comic books and movies thing, as we said in the intro. And it really is a lifelong obsession, isn't it? This comic books.
Oh, it very much is. It's like I said, 8 years old, I got started. My dad and my uncle both read comics their entire lives. So they were like, read this, check this out, here, try this. So it just became a thing. And with the exception of those couple of years in high school, man, I got back into it in college and just never looked back. I have bookcases full of trades and boxes full of comics and just too damn many. I don't know what I'm ever going to do with them. I don't have kids. I've long considered just I'll donate them to Children's Hospital at some point. It's hard to part with them.
Yeah.
So you actually had parental figures guiding you through comic books to begin with.
Oh yeah. My dad and my uncle were huge into comics. My mom and my stepdad didn't care one way or the other. I think they never understood why I would read comic books from morning until night every single day. But if they wanted me to read like another book, I'd just be like, no, I got these ones with pictures in them. They're fine.
So you said before that sometimes you like to like go for the graphic novel and sometimes they're funny books. Is there a way that you can classify it? Because I've heard other people saying that like there are ways that you can say that this is a graphic novel, this is a comic book, and it's never made a huge amount of sense to me, and it appears to be largely on like perceived artistic merit.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. I would venture to say, I guess, if Marvel or DC publish them, or it has a superhero in it, or a superhero aspect of some sort, it's got to be a comic book.
It's a comic book, okay.
But then, I mean, Watchmen is technically about superheroes, and if you wanted to say Watchmen is not a comic book, it's a graphic novel, I mean, I guess I couldn't argue with you. I'm going to call all of them comic books because I don't think comic book is a dirty word. I don't think it's insulting. Like, I don't think if you call a graphic novel a comic book, you're taking anything away from it or you're implying it's only for kids. I mean, it's a book that is done comically. It seems perfectly fine to me. But if somebody listening out there is like, no, this is what I read and it is a graphic novel and it doesn't have superheroes, I'd be like, all right, that's fine. That's good for you.
Someone is clutching a copy of Persepolis. So
that's it. 100%. Yeah.
This is where I was going to go with it, because then you also the other distinction is between like serialized adventures and standalone things, isn't there? So, for example, Watchmen is it was self-contained. You have stuff like the Pride of Baghdad as well.
Mm-hmm.
I read something a while ago. I think it was called the Descendants or Descenders.
Yeah.
These kind of things. I think it was Gabriel.
There was
Gabriel
Descender, and then there was subsequently an Ascender.
That's right. Okay, and there's all these kind of things where they kind of like hold into themselves a bit, rather than being part of like ongoing serial runs on arcs inside a superhero's lifespan, like Spider-Man and Superman.
Yeah, so Spider-Man has been one storyline going on since 1962, and it's still going on. And since 1962, Peter Parker has aged like 15 years. It's fine. He's gonna be 30 forever from now on, and that's fine. And then you've got other stories that are just, here's 12 issues, here's my story, and I'm out. And I think there's good merit to both of them. I think I could get into a whole rant about things. I won't. But I think Marvel and DC have really missed the plot a lot of times with the serialized storytelling, where they don't understand how to keep things fresh and they keep trying to do reboots and they keep moving their timeline. And it just gets too confusing as to, well, what still happened? Like if I pick up an Amazing Spider-Man right now, like number 817, does what happened in Amazing Spider-Man number 104 still matter? And I get confused about those kind of things a lot. And if you just read the miniseries, if you just read those self-contained stories, you don't have that problem.
No, agree.
Yeah.
So Kingdom Come then. So what about that story makes it your favorite
Kingdom Come, and boy, this is kind of telling on the story I just wrote a little bit, but it's about the DC universe. It's about Superman, Batman, all those kind of things, but it takes place in the future where, it's a typical like, oh, the future has gotten bad and there's a bunch of superpowered people running around and they don't have any morals and they're just wrecking the planet. And it's told through the eyes of this elderly pastor or reverend or whatever it is, who is visited by the Spectre, who in comics is the living embodiment of God's wrath. So he gets this old pastor guy and he's like, hey, something shitty's going to happen. I got to figure out who to punish. So they just go and they're watching all this shit happen that's going to lead the world to Armageddon. And just, boy, Mark Waid's writing in it is so good. And you get all this larger than life comic book bombast from the perspective of this like 70-year-old man who leads a church but doesn't have faith in anything because of what he's seen going on in the world. And there are just moments in it that are just so powerful. Like, it's a comic I've read so many times, and I will pick it up now, and it just sends shocks through me when I read it, the stuff that happens in it.
I've not read it, but I tell you what, you're selling it to me. It's
Oh, it's 4 issues. You get it as a collected trade, but it was originally 4 issues. It's a real short read. Yep.
Yes, that's like 20 minutes reading, isn't it? That's not
yeah, it's pretty quick. It's pretty quick. And I don't know if you know Alex Ross, but he's a comic book artist fairly famous for he paints his comics. Like, it's not just drawn and colored like a comic. Everything is painted and it's gorgeous.
Did you do Marvels?
Yes, he did Marvels. Yep.
Because that is stunning.
And if you ever want to see super realism in comics, I think it's the last page of the 3rd issue of Kingdom Come. Captain Marvel, now known as Shazam, is standing there and he has a bulge in his tights, and it's like, yeah, that's what you would look like if you wore those. That makes sense. Captain Marvel's packing.
Right, speaking of Captain Marvel's package, I'm actually really intrigued by where this one's going to go. And I think it's going to stay in the comic book realm. But what's something you've read that just didn't work for you at all? And why was that the case?
Something I read that didn't work for me. I one of those things, I have an English writing degree. You'd think I would have read more of it. I started reading, of all things, The Catcher in the Rye, which everyone in the universe has read. And I started reading it. It wasn't even for a class of mine. I just thought like, all right, Catcher in the Rye, I should read this. And I don't know if I should have kept going with it. I got about halfway through and I was just like, this kid's a dick. I don't like him. I don't want to read his story. I just wasn't interested in him. I just couldn't get into his story. It just felt like, all right, he's whining. He leads a boring, crappy life. I don't understand.
So it's like the protagonist being a whiny bitch.
I guess, and I mean, that can work. That can 100% work, but maybe it's just one of those things, like, I don't know if it was the mood I was in at that point in my life or when I read it. That story just didn't stick with me, and I didn't want to empathize with him, and I just couldn't.
See, that's interesting to say that you didn't want to empathize with him. So did it feel like a conscious decision when it happened?
Probably. It didn't feel like it when it happened. It felt like, it's me passing the buck here onto the book and saying the character was pushing me out of it. And that's on me saying that, I'm blaming the book for that. I'm blaming this classic novel that everyone in the world loves. And I'm saying, oh, book, you're the problem. But no, that's what I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was just me in my head and I didn't relate fast. And I just got to a point where a few pages in where I wasn't hooked quickly enough. And so I just detached.
Don't worry, gang. You'll find out where you can @Stu later on in the podcast.
There is something to this idea of like being told that something's a classic before you read it is just a really bad idea.
Yeah.
It's funny. As I've gotten older, I'm much more into movies than books. Like, I still read comic books all the time. I still read manga all the time, but I watch a ton of movies. And this past year with COVID, I have watched, probably since the start of COVID, I've watched like 200 some movies.
Well,
And I've watched a lot of classics for the first time, and I'm always wary of those because
yeah.
what if this doesn't land with me? I watched the first Alien and I gave it a 3 out of 5, and you would have think I was slaughtering babies.
I actually had the same reaction the first time I watched Alien because I didn't watch it until I was an adult.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is a joke haunted house movie.
Right? That's what I thought. I was like,
yeah.
they put so much effort into just making the spaceship look scary that it was just like, all right, well, you can just do that with the story and the atmosphere. You don't need to basically film it in a dark warehouse and be like, look, see, fear.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have since rewatched it and somewhat revised my opinion, but not much, it has to be said.
Not when it's followed up by the greatest Vietnam movie ever made.
Well, yeah, I'm a bit of a sucker for those kind of war movies, especially when
Aliens is much better than Alien.
Aliens is a very good movie. It's just got a lot more, for me, got a lot more going on in it, I think. This as you say, like classic movies. But then sometimes they can just bite, can't they? Because I have on my watch list, I have countless classic movies that have been on there for years at this stage, and just occasionally I find myself in the right mood to watch one, and I always enjoy it if I let myself find that mood to be open to it and just be like, oh, let's see what this is all about.
Mm-hmm.
It typically doesn't disappoint. There's probably been a few where I was like, that was kind of shit.
Right, like I'm saying Alien disappointed me and I gave it a 3 out of 5. Like Alien is a good movie, don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here shitting on Alien. It was just like I thought there were problems with it, but mostly I enjoyed it. But yeah, and the last year I've also watched Groundhog Day, Shawshank Redemption, The Exorcist. Those are all exactly worth what everybody says about them.
Yeah. Oh, peak Bill Murray.
Oh yeah, I don't know how I'd never seen Groundhog Day, but I watched that for the first time, and I very seldomly give a movie 5 stars on one viewing, but nope, Groundhog Day got 5 stars right away.
I'd really recommend checking on Spotify. Tim Minchin wrote a stage musical of Groundhog Day.
Oh, really?
And my favorite thing about it is when it opened on Broadway, Bill Murray went in the same outfit every night for the first week. But yeah, it's really, really good. Really, really good stuff.
Tim Minchin.
All right. If you haven't encountered him before, he's an exceptional musical comedian.
The name's not familiar. I don't know if I've heard anything of his, but the name doesn't ring a bell.
He's Australian, which might put it a little bit sort of outside the normal sphere. It is Australian, isn't it? Or is he New Zealand?
He is Aussie.
Isn't he? But he also wrote the Matilda musical, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah, and I think he's got a few specials out there. He was sort of Bo Burnham before Bo Burnham was Bo Burnham.
Okay.
So Bill Bailey was.
Well, there you go. Yeah, we just keep going back, don't we? Until you get to the man in the fez.
Oh, get the man in the fez. Spoon, jar, spoon, jar, spoon. Just anyone in our audience under 30 just went, "What the fuck?"
I think anyone in our audience under 40 just went, "What the fuck?" Well, okay, I like that answer. Like this idea of like bouncing off classics and judging them on their own merits, as far as you're concerned, is I think it's a good way to read things. When you actually come to do the writing for yourself, like what you put together, whether it's for articles for your website or indeed the short story that you wrote for this, or indeed anything else that you've written, what's your process when you get down to it? Do you have to plot anything, or...
Fiction is different for me than writing an article. Like
let's
when it comes, what's that?
Let's go fiction then.
Okay, so fiction involves me overthinking myself to death, and then nothing ever happens. Like I have story ideas from when I was 17 or 18 years old that I've written and scrapped and started over from the beginning, and no, I still don't like that. I have the absolute curse that every writer has, where it's just like, I hate my own stuff and I think it sounds terrible. But what my process will tend to be, And it's harder now that I'm married. There's somebody who lives in my house and will think I'm crazy if I do this. I will just pace around my house and I will talk the story out to myself out loud. I will pace in a circle, pace back and forth across the room, and I will just speak the words and come up with inflections for how the character should be saying things. And then when I think I've got it done well enough, then I will sit down and write. And yeah, that's harder. I have to find reasons for my wife to go out. It's like, don't you have dance class tonight? Why don't you go dance? And then I sit here and I don't sit. Like I said, I stand, I pace around, I occasionally bend over and pet one of the cats, and I'm talking the story out to myself.
She thinks you're keeping things from her, but in fact you're just indulging in your own.
She always thinks I'm
specific
having an
matter.
affair. Always thinks like, why do you
yeah.
want me out of the house? Why aren't you coming with me to my sister's?
So I can talk to myself about the story.
Yeah, I don't want you to think I'm more crazy than I am.
Have you ever thought about teaming up with someone? 'Cause it sounds like you've got loads of good story ideas knocking around in your head. You could just palm them off on some poor unfortunate soul and make them write a book for you.
I have done a lot of collaborative stuff. When I was in college, online, it's the very early 2000s, like literally 2000, the year. And I got together with a bunch of other people on a comic book forum, and we created our own website at the time where we basically built our own comic book universe, and everybody kind of wrote everybody else's characters and everybody shared everything, and we got together and we would have meetings about the direction of everything. And it's where I learned how much I love writing other people's characters, because it's like my own characters, I always feel like, no, I'm doing wrong by them. But whenever I handled other people's characters, like this one guy had a gang lord who I wrote so well, and I loved writing him. And basically I would just stop writing my own characters and be like, I'm going to write this guy's life for a while. It's much better. But yeah, I've worked with other people, and I've seen other people write characters of mine and thought like, well, shit, that's better than I would have done. But that's just what you're saying. Like, I have all these ideas, and when I've seen other people write my ideas, I'm just like, yep, that's it. That's good. And I've occasionally worked with, not nearly as often, but I've occasionally worked with artists, and I just die because if there's one talent in the world I wish I had, it's the ability to draw. So I see people that can draw my ideas, and I'm just like, oh my God, you're the greatest person who's ever lived.
So it has to be said that I'm very lucky in my co-host. Nico is an excellent artist.
Oh man, you're the best, man. I appreciate and love anybody in the world who has that talent set.
And he just lays it out there, like with everything. And occasionally he'll say, "Have you got any ideas for this?" And then I'll say something mental, and then he'll just be able to pluck it out, and it'll be far better than I could have ever attempted, because I can't.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I've got pig's hoofs when I try and draw. Like it doesn't work.
I always say, like, I was considered a really good artist whenever I was in like 3rd or 4th grade, but my talent level stayed right there.
Finger painting was about where I stopped. So
I can tell a quick story. Ben has recently turned 30. That's right, outed.
Yes. When we started this podcast, I was a young man in his 20s.
Yeah, not anymore, Grandpa. Welcome to old age. Now,
I've lived too long. I can start body bagging people, right?
you can. But I had a pencil and paper on the table, didn't I? And I said, I drew. We'd done a Star Wars role play the night before, and I drew.
If you really want that insight into our
you want to know the level we're operating on. And I drew my character
like Star Wars Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was pretty dank, actually.
But better than that sounds.
I mean, it would have to be.
But to cut a long story short, I decided that when I felt I'd reached each stage of inebriation, I'd come in and attempt the next character. And this wound up with me drawing a caterpillar with an enormous set of genitals, which another party goer then had to hide from some of your family members, Ben.
It was so obscene. I'm surprised it didn't get put up in the attic.
So when you say I tell him to draw things, he just lays it out there. Remember that was your doing.
It was my doing.
It was your doing.
I demanded enormous caterpillar genitalia.
I mean, don't we all at some point in our lives?
Despite having an extremely weak gag reflex, as we spoke about before the podcast started.
This is a tell-all episode. This one. Oh, all right. Let's bring it down all the way down to earth, man.
What?
Listen, I'm trying something new.
With Neil and I did.
Have you? And I'm gonna say this for podcasting. Have you ever come up against any adversity or sort of real glass ceilings or roadblocks in the process of becoming a podcaster?
Oh, that's so easy to answer, and I don't want to know, or I don't know how much I want to get into it. But yes, the Stew World Order is my second podcast. Yeah. My initial podcast was Ghosts of the Stratosphere, which I hosted with 2 other gentlemen, and there's very much roadblocks and conflict that got in the way of that, which is why Ghosts of the Stratosphere no longer exists. But yeah, I moved on to my own thing. They moved on to their own thing. There was a lot of conflict over how the podcast should sound, whose role was going to be what. I mentioned before that I've done collaborative work with people, but boy, my 2 buddies that I was doing work with for that podcast, man, there was a lot of conflict. There was a lot of butting heads after a certain point. We got 2.5 years in, man. I mean, it's not like we shouldn't have been able to power past it, but yeah, just kind of fell apart.
I'm sorry to hear that, but at the same time, like your SWO is exactly what you want to be doing, as far as I'm aware.
It is. I really enjoy. I didn't edit the previous show. And as much as that's my fault because I was lazy and didn't want to, it was also part of the problem. And I didn't like the way the show was being edited at that point. So I like now that I have full control over what the podcast sounds like. And if I think it's bad, it's on me and I can fix what I think is wrong with it. And if I think the episodes are too long, I can work on making them shorter. If I want to change the format, everything's in my hands. So I really enjoy where I am now. So yes, there's been conflict, but I have come out on the other end of it much happier and much more content.
I mean, that's good. That can only be a good thing, man. And I've, lucky enough to take part in SWO, and it's such a fun concept. Like,
I feel bad. You and I did an episode, and it was the very first episode. I don't look back on it unfondly at all. We did a great job. Having you on made it sound tremendous. But since then, I have come up with, I basically diagram just a basic, like every episode. It's not like each individual episode I do one. It's just, this is what the show is. And I give it to people in advance, and I'm just like, here's what we do if you haven't listened to it.
It sounds like it got worked out in the room, though, didn't it? Like, I think we did something quite similar where we had to like work it out with people. Like our first season was largely done with just mates.
Mm-hmm.
Whilst we were sort of trying to get where we wanted it to be, and then the second season we did something a bit different with it, and then obviously we're doing something a bit different in the third season as well by splitting the format a bit. But I think it's okay to evolve naturally, and then once you get it right, to try and replicate it, which sounds like that's what you've done. That sounds like a really clever way to do it.
I think so. I've definitely been enjoying it.
Brilliant. I think Nico. On now. I was going to say, I think Nico's fishing for a return invite.
Oh, Nico, I would love to have you back on absolutely anytime. Ben, if you want to come on, you don't have to be a comic book expert to just watch the movie and talk about the movie. Trust me.
I mean, my opinions get fairly acerbic about comic books. I do.
That's okay. That's perfectly fine. You were allowed to.
No, I mean, because it comes from a place of love. Like I know what I like in comic books, and I very strongly know what I don't like about comic books. Some comic books. So
right.
So yeah. Anyway. Yeah, I'd love to. I think that'd be a fun thing to do. And
I should be. What is it? Today's August 19th. I'm thinking. I actually, as of right now, I have all of my episodes recorded up through New Year's Day.
That's fantastic.
Crikey.
Immediate podcast jealousy.
I like to do things in big batches. And to be fair, my show also only comes out twice a month. So it's not like, I'm not doing like hundreds of episodes or anything. But when I start recording in batches, I kind of can't stop. And then I'll do 10 or 12 like episodes in the span of 2 weeks because I just get such a blast out of it. So I'm thinking probably around October, before everyone starts getting too busy with, the holidays and everything. Oh, yeah. I will do another batch. So I will definitely reach back out to you guys.
Let's do it, man.
We can get both of you. We could do both of you on one episode, one of you on an episode each, however you want to do it.
You should pit us against each other and find a way to drive a wedge.
It takes so little.
So I'm gonna move us on a little bit before we get too much adversity. And say if you had to pick one genre of fiction to keep, and all the others are just completely chucked out of the moving car window, which would you choose and why?
Oh, that's frightfully hard.
It is a bit as well, especially because we're through the lens of the comic books here, which if you'd like to keep it, we can certainly approach this question with that.
Probably, I do like superheroes a great deal. I think they count as their own genre anymore. Probably overall, I can't write it. And it's one of those things like I can't write it at all, and I'm very envious of anybody that can. I really love horror though. I mean, I grew up with the kind of parents who I had seen all of the Jason movies when I was in single digits.
Yeah.
So I just grew up with a love for that genre, and I still watch the Halloweens and the Friday the 13th regularly. I will be doing a series with my buddy John over at Pina Comics, who calls you the Beetle. He's going to do a video series where we're going to watch every Nightmare on Elm Street, because starting last year, we already did the Friday the 13th. I really like horrors, 80s slasher horror, 70s horror, whenever you had The Exorcist and the first Michael Myers. The 2010s was a great great decade for horror. And if you'll allow, on the basis of the question, horror comedy. So good. When you combine that peanut butter and that chocolate, man, I love the horror comedy genre.
I mean, in the past, we've been fairly loose with this. We've allowed people to say stuff like detective fiction and horror and this kind of thing. But I think actually through the lens of comic books, it becomes quite interesting because, for example, Batman, at least in my fairly limited awareness of Batman, different miniseries, different runs on Batman focus on different aspects of the character.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you can have one run where he's very much the world's greatest detective, and another where he's just kicking the shit out of supernatural beings in a sewer.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the lines cross a little bit, but there's normally a focus. So if you went horror, would you lose your first love, 602 Detective Comics?
I'm sure I would. I mean, thankfully it's a hypothetical I would never have to live out. But to think about it, like, boy, would I rather lose Spider-Man or would I rather lose Jason? And I love them so much. I don't want to fight over my children.
Understandable. Well, I won't make you kill either of them yet.
I might. This could be a really interesting one. What is a quote that you live by, Stu?
So, okay, I've got a good one for this, and we're actually going to go back to comic books on this one. I have one tattoo that I've gotten in my entire life, and on my right arm, I have the Blue Lantern Corps logo. And there's a whole reason for why I have that. It's because I have a little bit of mental health issues. Nothing terrible, but I've got some anger, depression, anxiety issues.
Yeah.
And in the comics, the entire point of the Blue Lantern Corps is that it's based around hope. It is the emotional spectrum color blue is for hope. And the Blue Lanterns are able to take away the fear from the Yellow Lanterns. They're able to take away the rage from the Red Lanterns. And the thing the Blue Lanterns always say in the comics is, all will be well. And I was thinking when I got the logo on my arm to also have them put those words, but I decided against it because tattoos are very, very painful and I didn't like it. Very painful. Everybody says, oh, they're not so bad. I got one on my arm, which is like the least bad place they could be. And I was just like, this is very painful. But yeah, I think all will be well. I think that's what it comes down to. I like to consider myself a very hopeful person. I like to consider myself somebody who things will work out. Try not to get too stressed out about it. Try not to get too angry about it. And that is, if not the person I am, then at least the person I strive to be most of the time.
I really dig that, man.
Lovely answer. Lovely answer. Messages of hope in your story and indeed in your quote as well. It's really nice.
Yeah, it's really who I want to be. Like, I recognize my flaws as a person, and when I want to do better, that's what I think of. I'll be completely honest. There were times in my life at a previous job I had where the job was just beating me down and I was in the lowest place I ever was. And I got to the point where, and you can laugh at this, it deserves to be laughed at. I have a little $1 toy Blue Lantern ring. I started wearing it to work just to have something on my finger that I felt and had a physical presence of. And I would be like, all right, all will be well. Just keep going.
I don't think that's funny. I think that's necessary. You know, people cling on to everything that they need to survive. It sounds like you're really under the cosh there. And then the thing that you held on to there was this idea of like a hopeful future that you wanted to better yourself in, and that's lovely.
Very similarly, I have a key ring, which on one side has the symbol for the summoning dark and the other the guarding dark, which are their symbols from the Discworld series.
Okay.
One symbolizes, in quite an oblique way in the book, but the potential of like the rage that's inside of you and your own fear and anger becoming, making you into a monster. And the other is a part of you in the book that is so much an old-fashioned copper that it stops that happening. But it's that sort of mythologized self-control and self-awareness that stops you from ever crossing that line. And to me, it has a huge amount of meaning. And ironically, you're talking about having the Blue Lantern badge. As Ben will tell you, I'm meant to be getting a Ankh-Morpork Pork City Watch badge tattooed on my arm. So that would be my equivalent to that tattoo. So I absolutely get where you're coming from.
Yeah, no, the way you describe that keychain, man, that is exactly it. That's exactly what that emblem and those words mean to me.
Oh, that's really nice. Well, so normally this is the bit where we ask the guest where our audience should start with their work in terms of what to read first. But perhaps that should be rephrased as what episode of SWO should people go and listen to immediately?
They should obviously listen to the first one. That's the one Nico's on. You get the base level. It's before I figured out that I needed outro music, and as of episode 3, we started having outro music. So sorry, Nico, you were late to the game on that one.
No,
but the first episode we talked Kick-Ass. I believe the 4th episode, Andrew from the Nomcast joined me and we talked Avengers Endgame. So if you want to hear about the highest grossing movie of all time, until Avatar passed it again, then you can listen to that one. And boy, maybe within a month from now, I will have an episode out where we talk Batman versus Superman. Super divisive movie, and we had a lot of fun talking that one. So that one should be out sometime in September. I don't know if it'll be the 1st or the 15th.
I'm already massively interested in that because I would love to hear people disagreeing about that movie, because that movie has one of my favorite bits of Batman in it.
Mm-hmm.
In movies, which is the bit where he is the guy running into the smoke right at the start.
Then you will 100% love when I start talking about my ups for the movie.
Excellent. And then I was just disappointed for the next 2 hours or however long it was. Oh, fantastic.
So yeah, that's the place to start with the Stu World Order. Definitely check out that Batman vs Superman when it comes out soon. And swoproductions.com. I write about Pop-Tarts a lot, so check that out. Just search Pop-Tarts on there. I have Pop-Tart Quest.
Mate, I love Pops. What's the top flavor? Gotta know.
As the best I've ever had so far was chocolate peanut butter or just regular peanut butter. Both the peanut butter ones were exceptional.
I'm all about the Fruit Loop flavor.
Oh, really?
Yeah, top.
Absolutely. Oh, don't read my article about that one then.
So Fruit Loops, obviously,
I couldn't even finish the first Pop-Tart. I've never had a box of Pop-Tarts that I ate one package of and then pitched. But man, I could not do the Fruit Loops one, man. You're a better guy than I am.
No, I'm just fucking gross.
You ever hear when people describe something as sickeningly sweet? That was the Fruit Loops Pop-Tarts. It felt like Mike Tyson was punching me in the face with a boxing glove made of sugar.
I think this just lines up with the type 1 diabetic and self-harm issue, doesn't it?
Just shoving Fruit Loops into any orifice that'll have it.
God, I hate me. Munch, munch, munch. Right, Stu, when people want to find you so they can tell you that you're wrong about, everything, because comic books are the most divisive media possible, where can they find you online?
On Twitter at SWO Productions. The website is swoproductions.com, and on pretty much any podcatching platform you have, it's the Stu World Order.
And remember, everyone tweet Stu about how Catcher in the Rye is the best book ever, and he's wrong, etc.
And Alien is a 5-star movie.
Well, it's been absolutely stunning having you on, Stu. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for reading out your story, and it was really nice to hear it. And then to chat about comic books, we often just discuss novels and that. So it's been really cool to.
I will bring the children's picture books anytime. You tell me when you want to talk children's picture books, and I'm here.
You denigrate it all you want, man, but I respect it as an art form and a medium, so I'm down for it. But yeah, no, thank you for coming on, man, and hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love taking the time to write this story. I love getting to read with you guys. Both your stories were fantastic, and it was a pleasure to get to hear them first before they go out onto the air.
Oh, get out of here, you big flatterer, you.
And all will be well.
All will be well.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Tiny Bookcase.
Remember to subscribe, otherwise you're going to miss out on the future fun.
Also, tell a friend. If you like this episode, link them to it.
We'd be tremendously grateful. You can follow us on Twitter at BookcaseTiny, Facebook at The Tiny Bookcase, and Instagram at BookcaseTiny for updates. Speaking of supporting the podcast, well, magic can only take one so far. The Tiny Bookcase is supported by the generosity of its patrons. Those kind souls have really kept my belly full the last year. Let's cast a spell for them, shall we? For magnificent beardery, let's cast the Chinicus folliculale spell on Gary Laird. For rich ginger tones on the scalp, let us cast the Orangi Hedondo spell for Scott Byrne. And for general fabulousness, why not the Ooh La La, How's Your Mother spell on Matthew McLaren.
How do you come up with that shit, man?